Good morning. My name is Clara Jimenez, and I am happy to serve today as your service coordinator. Our pastor, Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley, will deliver today's reflection entitled Shower the Things You Love in the Gorgeous Petals of Rose. But first, a few announcements. If you are new to North Chapel, welcome. If you are visiting us today, please sign, if you wish, the book at the back of the sanctuary. We have hearing assistant devices and large print versions of the hymns and of the service on the back table as well, should you need them. Chloe is here today oh, there they come, right on cue. She's here today to lead the children in spiritual exploration. We are still masking today, but as you probably have read in the order of service, as of March 1st, masks will be optional. Thank you so much to the task force for their leadership in the last 3 years. After the service, we invite you to join us in the social hall for coffee hour, where masks are optional, and out of caution, we still request that folks attending wash their own cup and utensils. Or remain here in the sanctuary if you wish, and socialize here as well. We have lots of things going on in North Chapel today after the service. There is art as healing force, where you are invited to join in a gentle time of art downstairs and explore the capacity of creativity and healing to change our lives. Also, as you see behind me on the altar, this is one of the items in our spring fling auction. There are also other items to look downstairs and look around, explore, and start planning your bidding. Buying bidding? Yes. And now I ask please to turn off your cell phones or put them in silent mode. In today's reflection, Leon invites us to gather beauty all around us for strength, for courage, for love, for safety. This invitation has made me think about the many times where finding beauty in unexpected places and moments have provided me with support, solace, or inspiration. But there is one example that instantly came to mind when Leon and I had a conversation about the underlying theme for today's reflection, and I thought I would share it. A few months after I started practicing law, I assisted one of the main lawyers in the firm in a double murder trial. I was, as we call it, the second chair. Our client, mentally disturbed and angry, shot and killed his former girlfriend and her new lover. The three of them were friends, close friends. There was no question about our client's culpability. He admitted to it. So the only question left for the court was about punishment. This hearing, this trial was intense. This happened in a very small community, and the courtroom was packed with family and acquaintances of both the victims and the shooter. The court had to weigh whether the crime had some aggravating factors that demanded a harsher sentence, or on the contrary, whether there were some legal reasons to show leniency. Some of the evidence that the prosecutors had to use to demonstrate that the crime was particularly cruel was very difficult to take. In addition to my own stress handling this, I kept thinking of the people behind us, the family and friends taking this in. Our client was shackled, sitting between the senior attorney and myself, and it is hard to think of a scene farther from beauty. Except when I turned, right after the defendant was sentenced to 25 years in prison, and saw one of his daughters and the daughter of his victim holding hands and comforting each other. These young women, in their 20s, had grown together in the community. They knew each other well, almost family. I was amazed that in this moment, they were able to overcome whatever anger, grief, shame, blame they felt, and simply hold hands, acknowledge the pain in the other, and show each other grace. When I think of beauty showing up in the darkest places, this is what comes to mind. We will now have a brief moment of meditation.
Seeing the glimmer through the dust. Let's go out for breakfast, I say to myself. I rush my card for the famous poet's birthday to the biggest post office at 8 on Monday, so it won't arrive late. Card with a green bamboo jungle, a panda bear looking content, which I wrote reminded me of him. At the hipster cafe, I order a latte, but it's bitter, the bagel too salty to eat. I spend the morning on a stool watching strangers on the street, March winds buffeting their eyes with winter dust. At lunch, I meet my beloved, her teaching gig done, but the cool taco trucks closed. Not enough staff, explains the handmade sign. We make our hungry way home in separate cars, and I stop at the railroad crossing. Last November, her student backed onto the tracks, didn't see the oncoming train. I pause at the makeshift shrine, a wooden cross, piles of basketballs, plastic flowers, teddy bears. Though the postman told me the card will arrive late, though the coffee was undrinkable, the bagel inedible, the taco place closed, though everyone has dust in their eyes, for one moment I saw it, a single ash leaf lifting upward, spiraling over the railroad tracks, brown, but somehow catching the light. So it gleamed in passing, spinning out of sight.
Barbara Massey lost her sister Catherine in the Buffalo shooting. As I said, I have a joy and a sorrow this morning. I have joy and sorrow about the story of a man who suddenly became violent. A man who, in the courtroom in Buffalo, during Barbara Massey's victim statement before the sentencing of the teenager who killed her sister Catherine and 9 others in a grocery store in Buffalo in the name of white supremacy. I have a joy and a sorrow about the story of a man who suddenly erupted in rage and lunged with power and with fury at the young one who took those lives. And I'm with him, and we are with him. Our hearts are broken too, and I have joy, thank God, because according to the news reports, Massey was interrupted as a man lunged at the convicted mass murderer, but he was restrained by court officers, and the gunman was rushed out of the courtroom. The Erie County District Attorney later said that the man who lunged would not be charged for the outburst. I have real joy that the Erie County DA found the decency and the dignity not to condone, but not to further penalize and punish at a time of great tragedy and loss. And so powerfully, the 19-year-old killer himself has openly apologized for what that's worth. It's not yet possible for someone like me to know what that's worth at this point. It's too soon to tell, but he did say this. He said, "I don't want anyone to be inspired by me or by what I did." I wish that we had, I wish times the miracle of 10 brave and beautiful Black lives that killer had come to this understanding before he started murdering people. I wish that he could have been showered in beauty and surrounded by a circle of grace and gentleness. Gather rose petals all around you for strength and for hope, for courage and for safety. Everything is possible within the circle of gentleness. Good morning and good snowy, super cold Sunday. Today is Sunday, February the 26th, and the title of this morning's reflection is Shower the Things You Love in the Gorgeous Petals of a Rose. I bid you welcome one and all. Welcome to the seekers of spirit, bold and bashful in the quest. Welcome to the wanderers here to give their souls a rest. Welcome to the open ones and to the broken ones, blissfully imperfect, blessed and beloved, given in care and compassion for one another, always and soul level deep, in good times and in tempest, in conflict and in consensus, held whole and honored by a love that knows no bounds. To all souls I say good morning. It's good to be together. If you were to break open your hymnals, you can if you'd like, but it's not important. On our hymn number 155 is called Circle Round for Freedom, and the words are these. Circle round for freedom, do you know this one? Circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned. Circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Lovely, thank you. I think circles are special. What do you think? Would you agree? Joni Mitchell would agree, and she sang about circles many years ago. Her words were, yesterday, a child came out to wander. You know the song? Caught a dragonfly inside a jar. Cheerful when the sky was full of thunder, and tearful at the falling of the star. And the seasons go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down. We're captives on a carousel of time. We can't return, we can only look behind from where we came and go round and round and round in a circle game. Round and round on a carousel of time. Again and again, we return to the very same places, but they are not the same. The places are slightly different. They've changed a little bit, and so have we. We know this now. We learn so much from circles all the time. And Harry Chapin would agree. He sang about circles as well. He sang about the power and the magic of returning. It seems like I've been here before, he said. I can't remember when. And I get this funny feeling that we'll all be together again. No straight lines make up my life. All my roads have bends with no clear-cut beginnings and so far no dead ends. I've met you 1,000 times, and I guess you've done the same. But still we lose each other. It's just like a children's game. As I find you here again, the thought runs through my mind that love is like a circle, so let's go round one more time. Because all of life is a circle. Both of them knew, Joni and Harry, that when you gather beauty everywhere around you, all things become newly possible. I was in Boston recently, and I bought a new book about forgiveness. I haven't read it yet, but I'm fairly certain that forgiveness is its theme. I have an intuitive sense about these things sometimes deeply inside myself. I feel like I know. I'm learning to trust my feelings more and more. And the title of this book is Forgiveness. An alternate account. So call me crazy, but I'm fairly certain about its theme. This book is written by a Harvard professor of Christian morals. He looks like a pretty nice guy. It starts off with a story about the gestures of forgiveness that were offered immediately following the tragedy at Mother Emanuel. The AME church in Charleston, South Carolina. 9 were killed in prayer, and the shooter was forgiven at the arraignment. By some, not by all, of the families that had lost loved ones on that terrible day, June 17th of 2015. The arraignment took place only 2 days later, and the family members were already in a station of forgiveness, only 2 days. Sometimes I struggle with forgiveness. I struggle often with forgiveness. I struggle all the time with forgiveness. I do not believe that I am always capable of it. Sometimes it's beyond me. And I shared this shortcoming of mine, if it is a shortcoming, with my former minister in North Carolina when I lived there. He was very helpful to me back in the day, more than a decade before the tragedy in Charleston. The Reverend Arvid Straube. I love that name. If I could pick a name for myself, it would be Arvid Straube. And I wouldn't care that he'd be upset by that. Arvid is a delightful man. He looked at me sternly and lovingly, and he said, "Leon, forgiveness happens in its own time." Forgiveness happens in its own time. Our job is not always to forgive. Our job is always to make ourselves available to the possibility of forgiveness. Our job is to not foreclose upon it, to not foreclose upon ourselves, to not foreclose on one another, but to face our sorrow and our grief, to allow our hearts to be broken, open. I hated hearing that. I'm not proud of this, but it is true. When I'm shattered, when my heart is broken, I close in on myself. I cradle my heart. I carry my heart like water with both hands. In fact, I gave myself that nickname years ago, and I wrote a song with it. Carries a heart like water, hold on with both hands. I close in, I cradle, I do not open to forgiveness immediately. It's not natural for me. In fact, I do the opposite, secretly believing that if I don't forgive, if I refuse, I can stave off the pain that is coming my way, which never works. I always fail, but most times I don't even notice because I'm cradling and because I'm so closed off that I don't even notice the day. And anger lingers long inside the evening and keeps the sun from rising in our eyes. Don't think that you can take the sun and sky for granted without some deeper compromise. Now, I didn't like what Arvid was saying. I resisted what he was telling me because deep inside myself, I already knew that he was right. But I didn't have the strength of spirit to act on what I knew. Not like those brave souls in Charleston. Not like Nadine Collier, the daughter of Ethel Lance, who was killed. She forgave the shooter. Not like Bethany Middleton Brown, the sister of DePayne Middleton, doctor, who was killed. She forgave the shooter, which simply cannot be done without a practice of faith that makes all things possible. It can't be done without a circle of beauty. So gather the rose petals all around you for strength, for hope, for courage, and for safety. Everything is possible within such circles of gentleness. My joy and sorrow this morning was about a man in Buffalo who could not forgive, a man I do not judge, and the courtroom that lovingly understood him and did not make things worse. In the liner notes, if you will, for this book about forgiveness, the following words appear. Forgiveness explores the complex moral terrain that too often serves as a salve to the conscience of power rather than an instrument for healing and justice. The author explains that forgiveness is simply the refusal of retaliatory violence through practices of penitence and grief. It is an act of mourning irrevocable wrong, of refusing the false promise of violent redemption, and of living in and with the losses that we cannot recover. Oh my God. It's brutal. It sounds so hard, but we do what's hard, and that's what makes us beautiful. And there's something deeply big U, capital U, universalist about this, the decision not simply to penalize and to punish. As you remember historically, theologically speaking, it was the universalists who championed the idea of universal salvation. In other words, all of us are getting into heaven, so live your life accordingly. As it is above, so may it be below. The tool for that powerful process, the main engine for it, is forgiveness. We do what's hard, and it makes us beautiful, but we can't just jump in with the big dogs. We have to start out small with the realities of our own lives, the most direct means by which the sacred is revealed to us. So I want to tell you a story about the little realities of my life. I want to tell you about a story about two cheating students at the University of Pittsburgh. I was a teacher's assistant in a survey course, and there were hundreds of people in this class. There were two students who turned in the same paper and hoped that I would not notice. One student got an A, and the other student got a D, nearly a failing grade. I called them both into my office to the same meeting and returned the papers to them to see how they would react. Both of the students accepted the very different grades that they were given for what was essentially the same pirated paper. They didn't complain, and they couldn't complain, not without admitting that they had cheated. The victor, who received the A, was smug and self-possessed. The loser, who had received the D, was indignant and disempowered. I observed their moods and commented on what I saw, and neither student reacted. The funny thing was that I had removed the cover sheet from both papers and had switched them so that the cover sheet on which the D grade was written corresponded to the paper that struck me as the original work, and the cover sheet on which the A grade was written corresponded to the paper that struck me as the one that was plagiarized. So the students' feelings were doubly displaced, and I had done that to them. Neither student noticed my sleight of hand until I slowly led them to it. Slowly, I must admit. I led them to it, and then they figured it out. I took a perverse pleasure in my slow and my deliberate speed. I'm sorry that I took that pleasure, but I did. So just as they were beginning to catch on, I said, "It seems to me that one or both of you have cheated on your papers. It seems to me this way because these papers seem so similar. So you have a choice right now. You can both accept your respective grades, and I will report you to the Honor Council, and they will decide your fate. Necessarily unfairly, though, but I will not intervene in defense of either one of you. Or you can rewrite your papers, but you'll have to knock them out of the park. I will still report you. I'm not at liberty to do otherwise, but I will support you both through the student judicial process." Now, I can't remember what happened exactly. I just know that there were no lasting consequences. The lesson was learned, the word got out, and I was satisfied with that. It's fun to play tricks on students every now and again. It's fun being a trickster. Years later, when I was teaching at a different school, it happened again. This time, though, the joke was on me. In the first week of class, I switched the names of two of my students by accident. It was very early in the semester, and neither of the students felt comfortable correcting me. out of some weird professorial respect, perhaps. The weirdness went away quickly, but they continued letting me call them by the wrong names for weeks. Now, we were digging into serious issues in that class: contemporary racism and structural oppression, civil war and civil rights, civil disobedience and the possibility of cultural peace, modernism, postmodernism, and snobbiness and genuine insight. The classes were great, but they were often interrupted by fits of nervous laughter that I never understand whenever I called the student by the wrong name. It wasn't until I returned their midterm papers that the two students whose names I had confused finally revealed themselves, because one paper grade was excellent and one was only average. So finally, they both fessed up. The joke wasn't funny anymore, at least wasn't funny for one of them. So I felt embarrassed. I felt so embarrassed. But they were very lighthearted about it, and I guess it's fun to play tricks on the teacher every now and again. It's fun being a trickster, so it goes both ways, I guess. I think it was karma for me for having taken perverse pleasure in watching my students suffer and squirm back in the day. What goes around comes around, so shower the things you love in the gorgeous petals of a rose. Send beauty out and into the world, and it will surely come back to you. I'm gonna send a brief text to Chloe Powell and ask her to bring the kids up. I want to ask them to help me with something, help us with something right here in the sanctuary. I never thought I would text in the pulpit. This is actually fun. I actually staged a false event in a previous church where I took a phone call right as the sermon was beginning, and I used my side of the telephone conversation as a means of delivering the service. It was great for those who got the joke, but not everybody did. So we'll do it. Anyway, do any of you guys know the story of Oliver Sacks? Dr. Oliver Sacks. You may have come across his name. He's the author of a book entitled The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. I love the title of this book, and I have to admit that for years I thought it was a children's story about a man, semi-successful, big ego, annoyingly big, workaholic, underachiever, late bloomer, husband, father. I had a vivid imagination. But his attention was never present. He was most of the time worrying about the future or regretting the past. Not that any of us have that tendency at all. Certainly not me. So he was a very funny, and very beautiful, lovely man. The following is a semi-true story. The names have been changed to protect the lives of the innocent. These are their stories. So this guy that I'm talking about, in the story, that he was increasingly estranged from his children, increasingly estranged from their mother, so much so that after many years of his casual neglect, he began to treat his wife like an article of clothing, something to be worn at appropriate times, to be put on and taken off as the occasion required, to be strategically dipped below one eye or worn tightly for inclement weather, to be tossed aside as it served its purpose, after it had served its purpose. My imagination runs very quickly away from me sometimes, and this was one of them. I figured that I didn't have to buy this children's book because I already knew the story. I didn't know that I didn't know the story. I figured that I had heard it somewhere over the years. I figured that someone has read this book and I had just caught on. Has anyone read this book? Do you know this book? It's not a children's story at all, is it, Sue? This book has a different origin, and one that I thought I knew, but in the words of the author, in the words of Oliver Sacks himself, he writes, "In 1983, a friend and colleague asked me if I would join him in giving a seminar on agnosis, the peculiar inability to recognize anything, including faces. At one point during the seminar, my colleague asked if I would give an example of visual agnosia, and I thought of one of my patients, a music teacher, who would become unable to recognize his students or anyone else visually. I described how Dr. P, this patient, would pat the heads of water hydrants and parking meters, mistaking them for children. And about how he even mistook his wife's head for a hat. Dr. Sachs said, "I had not thought of elaborating my thoughts on Dr. P up to this point, but that evening I wrote up his case. I entitled it, 'The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat,' and I sent it off to a magazine. It didn't occur to me that it might evolve into a collection of stories. Molly, can I ask you to do me a favor? Can you run down and see the book became a bestseller. It was a popular success. For many, many years, I'm sad to say, I mistook the real meaning of the man who mistook his wife for a hat. For many years, I've been stuck in my illusions. I am only now coming out of my illusions. And why? Because the world that I love so much is finally beautiful enough for me to allow myself to be known more fully, warts and all. Is the world yet beautiful enough for you? Or are you brokenhearted in cradling your fragile heart like water with both hands? Do you feel both ways at once? I wonder if we can try something. I've asked Marianne to help me. And I want to ask Matt and Gail, would you participate in this? I want to ask you to come and sit in 2 chairs. That's all you have to do. You don't have to jump around anything. Melanie, would you also come? I'm going to set up 4 chairs up front. Step 1. Step 2 is I'm going to ask you to accept the stole around your shoulders. The stole that represents the ministry of this church. You guys. And then I want to ask for us to begin the ritual, I'm going to ask for Barbara's help and for Clara's help. So, Clara, you can open the lavender petals and give 1 lavender petal to each of these 4 people. Each of these folks are representatives of the elder energy of the church and of the new energy of the church. So I'm going to ask that they hold these lavender petals. Lavender is a sign of purity. Can you take the bag and get ready to use half of it? No, this bag that Clara has. And just stand behind these guys. Okay. Lavender is a sign of beauty, purity, silence, devotion, and sincerity, and grace, and calmness. Lavender is a kind of purple, and purple is the color of royalty. It speaks of elegance and refinement and luxury. Please accept these energies into your lives. Please allow yourself to be showered with beauty. Go ahead and use about half of that bag. Yeah, just dosing. Nice. Chloe, can you take the remainder of that bag and take 1 of your 4 groups of students? That's good. And then give the rest of the bag to Chloe. And then can you deliver them as you see fit somewhere in the congregation? Anywhere. Beautiful. Clara, can you please place a yellow petal in the hands of all volunteers? Yellow is a sign for happiness, for hope, for spontaneity. Yellow is a signal of caution and a symbol of brightness. It can signify the light of a brand new day. Please accept this beauty into your lives. Barbara. Courage. Clara, can you please place a deep red petal in the hands of the volunteers? Red is the sign of danger, and red is the sign of courage. It symbolizes heat and activity, passion and sexuality, anger, love and joy. Will you please accept this beauty into your lives?